to multiply leadership. We are exploring in this topic the mandate to multiply leadership. I'd like you to know that leadership is not about you. And the earlier you settle that in your heart, the better for you. Leadership is not about you. Leadership is about the people. In other words, your leadership has to be people-centric if you must make your mark in life. Leadership is not about people surrounding you, doing obeisance to you, doing rankadede for you, or bowing down, prostrating, and doing all sorts of things for you. That is not leadership. Leadership is about being people-focused. And that is the understanding that I want you to live with after this teaching. That leadership is about demonstrating responsibility to the people you are leading. It's not you trying to exercise your authority or trying to demonstrate how powerful you are. That has nothing to do with leadership. So what is the true call of leadership? The true call of leadership is to multiply leadership. That is the essence of leadership. If you are not multiplying leaders around you, you are not a leader. Leadership is not about creating followers, which is what many people love to do. Many people love to create followers, but that is not leadership. That is rulership. A true leader raises other leaders. A true leader multiplies other leaders. A true leader develops other leaders. So multiplying your leadership is the cross of an effective leadership. It is what I call the true call or the purpose of leadership. If leadership does not entail developing other leaders, raising other leaders, ensuring you are multiplying leaders around you, your leadership, in short, has lost its purpose. So multiplying leaders or multiplying leadership is the centerpiece that holds the accomplishment of a leader together, because you are not going to be there forever. And if you as a leader, when your time is over, you don't have anybody to take over from where you stop, you have become a failure. If you cannot find somebody to take over from you from where you stop, you have become a failure. So that is why multiplying leader is the real thing about leadership, because you are not going to be there forever. Can you imagine if Jesus had not trained the 12 disciples to become apostles? The church would have died long time ago. So you need to have the understanding of leadership multiplication for your leadership to become transgenerational. Multiplying leadership, in my own estimation, is the most important, the most noticeable, the most refreshing, the most exciting, and the most attractive part of leadership. And also, in most cases, it is also highly demanding. You see, leadership, multiplying leadership is not a small job, it's a serious work. It requires intense participation of the leader and those that are being led. It's a lot of work to develop other people. Even though it is very exciting, it is very important, it is refreshing, very attractive, because people begin to see a lot of people, participating in your vision and all that, but it is also very demanding, highly demanding. And when a leader despises multiplication of leadership as an act of leadership, then you do it at your own peril. So we are going to talk about different ways we can multiply leadership. There are 5 major ways that I have identified through which leadership can be multiplied. And I've tried to use the same letter for the beginning of each of those ways that we are going to explore. Now, in reality, the reason why we try to separate these 5 ways of multiplying leadership is for our own learning, but in reality, they go hand in hand. Sometimes you can model leadership to somebody and still at the same time mentor the person, and still at the same time monitor the person, and still at the same time motivate the person. So this concept work hand in hand, but we are only separating them so that we can understand how they function in real life situation. So we have modeling, we have mentoring, we have monitoring, we have motivating, and we have a movement. And these are the 5 major ways of multiplying leadership. And we're going to talk about each concept one after the other. So let's start with modeling. I'm sure you have heard people talk about or say something like, so and so is my role model. Perhaps you have also said it before, that so and so person is your role model. I have said it several times. There are so many great people in life that are role models to me. Some of them don't even know that they are role models to me. A few of them knows, but a lot of them don't even know, because of the role they have performed in life, which has benefited me, which still continues to benefit me. So modeling, there is one significant thing about modeling. Modeling always produces 100% result. When you model your life after a person and you assume the state of that person, the disposition of that person, and the physiology of that person, I can assure you that you are bound to produce 100% result that person produces. That is one beautiful thing about modeling. Modeling produces 100% result. Even in real life, when a company creates, let's use a car for example, they create a particular model of a car. When they produce another model of that car, do you think anything is going to be different from that particular model? It's not. It is exactly the replica of that model that will be produced. If they produce 1 billion of that product, it is going to be the same product. And that is what modeling is. And in modeling, what we are saying is that you have to assume the state, the disposition, and the physiology of that person before you can produce the kind of results that person is producing. For example, which leader can we talk about now? Let's talk about Elon Musk, for example. If Elon Musk is your model and you want to produce the kind of results Elon Musk is producing, what you need to do to get the same result that he's getting is that you need to assume his state of mind. You have to assume his mindset. You have to see things the way he sees things. You have to do things the way he does things. You have to assume his state, his disposition, and his physiology. You have to be in the exact frame that made him who he is before you can produce the same result that he's producing. Now, another example that I can cite for you is the example of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Mahatma Gandhi was the first person, where he wasn't the one who originated the non-violence principle, but I think he was the one who popularized it. Mahatma Gandhi used non-violence principle to fight the British Empire. He fought them vehemently by utilizing non-violence philosophy as his own way of protesting against the colonialism of the British Empire. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. saw how successful Mahatma Gandhi was by using this philosophy, this political philosophy of non-violence resistance. And he decided to use the same philosophy by fighting racial injustice in the US in the 50s and 60s. And he was able to achieve exactly the same result that Mahatma Gandhi achieved. Remember, it was in the process of using this principle that Mahatma Gandhi was killed. And it was in the process of using this same principle that Martin Luther King too was killed. So you can see that this principle always produces the exact result of the person who is utilizing that model. And you can find various examples. I can literally give you some biblical example of those who utilizes modeling as a way of developing or multiplying leaders. If you want to talk about Elisha and Elijah, you want to talk about Jesus and Peter, you want to talk about Samuel and Eli. These are people who utilized modeling as a form of leadership development and produced exact result that the former person created. One of the things that excites me most about modeling is that if you are not careful, when you model your life after somebody, you can also model their error. That is one big disadvantage about modeling. And that is why I always caution people, when you are modeling your life after somebody, you have to be careful so that you don't also model their error. Because if you model their error, you will also produce the error they have produced in their life. And that is why when Eli could not train his children, they were sons of Belial. When Samuel also came to the scene, his children also became a wayward children because he modeled his life after Eli. If you remember how Jesus raised a dead person, a dead man from somebody who died, and Jesus raised the person back to life. You remember that Peter was there. James and John was also there. When Peter was also confronted with the case of Dorcas, he produced exactly the same results. Why? Because he has seen somebody done it before. You see, the one beautiful thing about modeling is that whatever any man has done before, you can also replicate the same thing. you can also produce the same thing. That is one beautiful thing about modeling. And the slogan of modeling is, I do it. I do it. I do it. I always want you to remember that. So that the slogan of modeling is, I do it. So the question I want to ask you is, who is your role model? Now let's talk about mentoring. I've said earlier on that these principles work hand in hand. They don't work in isolation. Sometimes they overlap one another. What is mentoring? Let me say that the most significant aspect of mentoring is that it is like a father and son, mother and daughter relationship. In other words, for example, in modeling, you don't have to be with a person before you can model the life of the person. You don't have to be with the person. But in mentoring, there has to be interrelational period between the two of you. And it is often like a father and son relationship or mother and daughter relationship. And the key word about mentoring is mimicking or imitating. And I'm sure we are all familiar with that word. As little children, when we were younger, we used to mimic our parents. We used to talk the way they talk. We used to, sometimes, if they scold us, we like to demonstrate that when we are trying to play amongst ourselves. We like to act mommy and daddy kind of, children's play and drama. That is the power of mentoring. It is all about mimicking. It is all about imitating. And then when we are saying mentoring, we are not saying that you should mimic, you should then now begin to mimic the way somebody talks. That is not the essence of mentoring. The purpose of mimicking is to mimic the valuable aspect of their life. You are mimicking and imitating the valuable aspect of their life. It's not as if you are trying to make your voice their voice. In as much as you are doing this, you also need to be authentic and be distinct in your own right. And of course, the slogan for mentoring is, I do it and you watch me. I do it and you watch me. So my question for you is, who is mentoring you? Who is your mentor? And who are you mimicking or imitating? Now let's talk about the next one, which is monitoring. Monitoring. Monitoring is a form of delegated leadership. You delegate some kind of responsibility. But the key here is to monitor through a feedback mechanism. When you delegate responsibility to somebody, you don't just give him everything to do. You delegate responsibility, but you also put a feedback mechanism to assess the performance of that person so that you can offer support when it is necessary and required. That is the purpose of monitoring. It is not to micromanage people. Monitoring is not the same thing as micromanaging. That is not what I'm talking about here. Monitoring is delegating responsibility to people and putting a feedback mechanism to assess performance so that you can offer support where it is necessary. That is the difference between monitoring and micromanaging. Micromanaging is literally just keeping an eye on somebody over every issue, even the smallest thing. You are just trying to see where you can find fault with that person. That is not what we are talking about here. And the slogan of monitoring is, in modeling, I said, I do it. In mentoring, I said, I do it, and you watch me. But in monitoring, I am now transferring the responsibility to you. So it is now you do it, and I watch you. You do it, and I watch you. So the question I want to ask you is, who are you giving permission to have oversight over you? Who are you giving permission to have oversight over you? Now, the next type of way we can multiply leadership is motivating. Motivating is slightly different from monitoring, from mentoring, and from modeling. Motivating is a complete delegated authority. Now, in monitoring, it is only a partial delegated authority or delegated leadership. But in the case of motivating, you are literally giving the whole authority to the person. And it requires no immediate supervision. So you now believe in the leadership of that person, and you are now giving that person the right to exercise their leadership ability. That is what motivating is. And the slogan is, you do it. I don't need to monitor you. I don't need to mentor you, even though I can still be there for you, but I don't need to provide immediate supervision for you. You just go ahead and do all that you have learned from me over the years. And that is why when you are at this stage of your leadership, people are going to question your authority as a leader. They are going to ask you questions like, by what authority are you doing these things? Who gave you this authority? You remember that when they were asking Jesus by what authority he was casting out devils or demons. They were asking him who gave him the authority. And this is what I call the reality check on your leadership ability. It is when your dream is being put to test. People are going to question your authority when you begin to exercise it. So you better be prepared to be able to provide an answer to that. Now, the last form of multiplying leadership is what I call a movement. A movement. A movement. And how do we create a movement? A movement is a culmination and a combination of all that we have been talking about: modeling, mentoring, monitoring, motivating. The aggregation of all this often results into what we call a movement. And what is a movement? A movement is what you create when you multiply leadership. It is transitioning your legacy to another generation. It is passing on of the baton of leadership to the next generation. And of course, the slogan of movement is let's multiply. Let's multiply. You are not just interested in you doing it. You are not just interested in becoming the only star. You want others to shine as well. You want others to demonstrate their leadership capability. So the slogan is, let us multiply. Let's multiply. Now the question is, how do we create a movement? We create a movement by nurturing, by caring for the people we are leading. Number two, by equipping. In other words, by training the people that we are leading. We nurture them, then we move from nurturing them to equipping them, and then we move from equipping them to empowering them. And when you empower somebody, what are you doing? You are releasing that person to go and demonstrate what they have within their capability to perform. So, and here is how it works: to nurture, train, and release a leader, who in turn nurture, train, and release other leaders, who also in turns nurture, train, and release other leaders, without breaking the cycle until a movement is created. So the question that I would like to ask you here is, what is your legacy? What legacy do you want to leave behind when you are not able to do all that you are doing now? How do you want people to talk about you when you are no longer there? And that is the reason why you need to create a movement through leadership multiplication. And so the question about what your legacy is simply preparing you for what I call a succession plan. Unfortunately, this is one area that Africa has not been very effective. In Africa, we don't even understand what a succession plan is. When a leader sees somebody who is capable, who can take their place, is either they try to eliminate that person or they try to suppress that person so that he doesn't even have a chance of becoming a leader. And I believe you all know what I'm talking about. We see that being played out in our society every now and then. You need a succession plan to live out your legacy. Every leader should work towards raising other leaders who will take their place. This is one major mistake a lot of organizations are making today: lack of succession plan. Like I said, particularly in Africa, this is very prevalent all across the African continent. Remember, it is in the multitude of people that the leader's honor is preserved. So my question is, what is your succession plan? What are you doing to ensure that your vision becomes a transgenerational vision? Thank you. I've come to the end of the class. If you have any question, please ask me, and then we can talk about it, and then we will close for the day. Thank you.